Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today I'm going to make a reverse dyed repeating diamond shirt. The shirt was washed and it's just damp with plain water. I also have the shirt turned inside out. I'm going to begin by centering the shirt, and so this process is going to go really fast. But down below in the description for this video, I have a link to another video which shows how to center a shirt. Basically, what centering a shirt does is it gets both sides of the front of the shirt next to each other and both sides of the back next to each other. That way, whenever I apply the dye or do any process to the front of the shirt, it's going to look more similar, and the same thing with the back. So now that the shirt is centered, let's do the diamond design. To draw the diamond on my shirt, I'm going to take the hem of the shirt and fold it up to the neck or the very top of the shirt. I'm going to go ahead and turn my shirt over and use a straight edge and a piece of chalk to draw a diagonal line on, which is going to be the pattern for my diamond. Now I'm going to fan fold this line and tie it with some sinew. I'm using sinew because I'm going to do a reverse dye process, and when I reverse dye the shirt, anything that is not tied with sinew and tied really tightly with sinew, the dye is going to be removed underneath that area. So I want to make sure I tie it with sinew, since it's wax coated, that dye remover can't get under that area to remove all of this original black color from the shirt. To make this repeating diamond, I'm going to tie other sinew lines, and I'm making the sinew lines get closer together as I get out toward the center of the diamond. Then instead of cutting the sinew off right at the very end, I'm going to go ahead and just wrap the sinew back going the other direction to give it a little bit more reinforcement. I'm going to leave this shirt tied during the entire process of removing the dye and adding the dye, so I want to make sure my sinew is tied really tightly and it's not going to come undone during any of these processes. Once I get back to my original sinew line, I want to continue adding sinew lines on the shirt, but this time I want to make them get further apart. After I tied the entire shirt, I went ahead and set it aside for a couple days, and I let it dry out completely before I started removing the dye. To remove the color from this shirt, I'm using a product called Out White Brite Laundry Whitener. I purchased mine at my local department store in the laundry aisle, but if you can't find it, I have a link down below in the description for where you can purchase some from Amazon. I'm removing the dye from quite a few shirts at the same time, and so I have them all placed down inside of a plastic container, and I have the container outside, and I'm wearing my respirator for this entire process. To remove the dye, I'm sprinkling the Out White Brite over the top of the shirts, and then I'm going to pour boiling hot water over the top of the entire container. To speed up the process a little bit, I'm going to add a little bit of additional Out White Brite over the top of the shirts. But as you can see, the minute I add the hot water, the Out White Brite starts to work removing the color. I left the shirts for about 10 minutes, then I took them to my utility sink and I rinsed them in cold water and put them into the washing machine, and I washed them using a warm water cycle and a little bit of Dharma's textile detergent. I left them tied for this entire process. Then I took them out of the washing machine and put them into my soda ash solution. And as you can see from this photo, some of the shirts turned my soda ash solution blue. This is why I suggest that if you are not wanting to change out your soda ash solution, don't put shirts that have either been reverse dyed or that you're re-dyeing down inside of your original or your main soda ash solution container. Then I left the shirts tied and wrung them out of my Panda spin dryer and set them aside and allowed them to dry out completely. And here are all the shirts after they were reverse dyed. I've put an arrow over the top of this shirt. I'm going to begin by ice dyeing this shirt a variety of shades of purple. So I've placed the shirt on top of a rack and I'm using some silicone cake molds to make myself an ice barrier. I have a link down below in the description for where I purchased the cake molds. Then to hold the cake molds up next to the shirt, I'm going to attach some wooden clothespins to my metal rack. I've used a variety of things for ice barriers. I have used cardboard and aluminum foil, cutting boards that I've cut into strips, the little thin plastic cutting boards, but the silicone cake molds are by far my favorite. They're really flexible and they're easy to wash and reuse over and over again. Okay, so now it's time to start applying the dye. I'm going to use a variety of purple, and in the beginning, since the sections are so small, I'm not necessarily going to add a color to each small section. Instead, the colors are going to go across sections. So I'm beginning with True Violet from Grateful Dyes, followed by Royal Purple from Grateful Dyes, Velvet Orchid from Dye Spin, Lilac from Dharma. As you can see on these smaller sections, I'm adding color to about 2 of the sections at a time. True Purple from Grateful Dyes. But as the sections get larger, I'm going to add just one color to each section from here on out. Starting with Hydrangea from Dharma, followed by Imperial Purple from Dharma, Plum from Grateful Dyes, then I'm starting over again with True Violet from Grateful Dyes, Royal Purple from Grateful Dyes, and the very last color I'm going to add is Velvet Orchid from Dye Spin. Now I'm going to add an additional sprinkle of soda ash over the top of the dye and place on a layer of ice. I set the shirt aside and I allowed the first layer of ice to melt. And this is what the shirt looks like. You can see there's quite a bit of undissolved dye left sitting on top, but I want to go ahead and add some dye to the back side of the shirt before I add another layer of ice to the top. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and take off my silicone cake molds, and I'm going to make myself a little dye boat out of some aluminum foil. I purchased some new Pro Chemical colors that I've never tried before, and so I have just a little bit that I use to make some color swatches, and I'm going to add that liquid dye to this dye boat. I'm adding boysenberry, mulberry, and a little bit of sapphire blue. I added about 3/4 of a cup of dye. Not a lot, just a little bit to hopefully get soaked up from the back side of the shirt. Then I set the shirt aside and I allowed it to go ahead and just sit with this dye underneath it for about 12 hours. After about 12 hours, I came back and added a second layer of ice to the top of the shirt. I wanted to see if I could dissolve a little bit of that dye that was left sitting on top. Then I allowed the shirt to process for about 2 days after all the ice melted. 2 days isn't a necessity, but I would go ahead and leave it for at least 24 hours after your second layer of ice melts. So as you can see, I got pretty good color saturation going all the way through the shirt. At least it looks like it from looking at the front and the back of the shirt. I started rinsing the shirt in cold water to rinse out the soda ash that was in the shirt. Then I untied the shirt and I rinsed it in some hot water to try to rinse out any of the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. This shirt is still really dark and it's got a lot of dye coming out of it, so instead of just continuing to rinse, I'm going to run some really hot water in my utility sink, add a little bit of Blue Dawn dish detergent to the water, and just allow the shirt to soak. I came back and changed out the water when it would cool off and continued the soaking process until the water was almost clear. Then I put the shirt along with a little bit of Dharma's textile detergent into my washer and I washed it using a hot water cycle. And after the shirt was washed and dried, this is what it looks like. Okay, so what do you guys think? I love this one. I think it turned out looking really pretty. I really like this shirt. I've made one of these before. I used a different color palette and I really like this design. I like the repeating diamond where it gets smaller toward the center and larger as it goes out from there. I think that's a really cool look. I also like the different streaks or stripes of black that are in the shirt kind of radiating out, where it looks like the Out White Brite didn't remove all the color, and I like that. I think that looks really cool. I got pretty good color saturation. There are a few areas that are still kind of that taupey color with just a little hint of color added to them, but I really like the taupe color from a reverse dye, so I don't mind if part of that shows on the shirt. I also like the color palette of all the various different purples on the shirt. I think they look really good together. I can't see a huge influence of the mulberry, boysenberry, and the sapphire blue that I put inside the dye boat. There's a little hint of blue on a couple of the taupey areas, but for the most part, the blue doesn't really show up, which is not super surprising. I mean, after I add the first layer of ice to the shirt is pretty damp, and so it's a little bit difficult for it to want to soak up the liquid dye. I probably should have added the liquid dye to the bottom of the dye boat before I added the ice on the shirt if I wanted a lot of that dye color to show up. I didn't really care if it did or not. It was just kind of an insurance policy to make sure the shirt got saturated really well, and just a little experiment to do on this shirt since I had the dye already mixed up. The color that looks kind of fuchsia or pink in the shirt is not really. I believe that it is the plum from Grateful Dyes. I like it though. I think it adds just a little pop of color and I like that addition into the shirt. So overall, I really love this shirt. I think it is beautiful and there isn't really anything that I don't like about it. But drop me a comment down below and let me know what you think. And I sure would appreciate it if you would like my video, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.